But he wanted a heads up when we're going to do the vote on the chair. Is that right, James?
Whoops. Yes, that's correct. He's had a sort of an emergency meeting come up, but he said if I give him five minutes heads up, he'll dial in to vote.
So John, I'm wondering, should we tentatively plan on when we think we'd do the vote?
Yeah, we could do that. How long was this meeting scheduled for, Paul?
The total meeting was for 2 hours. I'm going to mute myself here while I take this call.
So, yeah, I think that maybe we could plan for 1 o'clock to have that agenda item.
Okay, I'll shoot him a text and just say that I'll confirm, but tentatively we're going to shoot for 1 o'clock.
Yeah, that sounds good, James. Thank you for doing that.
Yep, no problem at all.
Hi, Bert. Hi, Richard. Hi, Robert. Yeah, let's go ahead and get started here. I think we're still waiting for a couple of people to join, but it's 5 after 12 now and the stream.
Got John Cashwell calling in wanting the passcode. Does somebody still have it handy? No? All right.
I have it if you need it.
Yeah, what is it?
The passcode's 493453. Yep.
John Cashwell.
Are you ready to start, Paul?
John Cashwell.
I think we can begin now. We have all governments represented. We have Sandra from Passamaquoddy. We have 3 state reps on. The 2 Penobscot reps are on, and we have 1 rep from Maliseet. Zeke is on.
Okay.
So it's
Cashwell is actually
now. So I'd like to go ahead and get started. And there's John. Hi, John. So we basically, as I understand it, we have 2 things on our agenda today.
correct.
One is to just review all of the various items that we've been working on, that MITSC's been working on over the past few years. So it's really a work plan session to go through all of those. And then the other thing on our agenda is to take action on installing a new chairman of the commission. And we're planning to do that at 1 o'clock. So I see John is with us here now. Are you going to be able to stay with us, John, or do you have to?
Yeah, I got done my other stuff early.
Oh, good. Then we can disregard the 1 o'clock time frame and just take that item up toward the end of the meeting.
John, can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Someone else had asked about the timing of the vote. I got the message with a phone number that I did not recognize. Somebody who has an 860 phone number. Is that Sam, maybe?
No, Paul, that was me, but I was able to move my stuff too. This is James.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive right in. Well, I guess first of all, we probably should do introductions. I don't know if there's any members of the general public that have signed on to listen today, but let's go ahead with introductions. I'll start. I'm John Banks. I am one of the Penobscot Nation's representatives and currently the interim chair of this fine group of folks. So I'm going to just move. I don't know what everyone's screen looks like, but I'm just going to go clockwise here, starting with Paul Tebow.
Hi, I'm Paul Tebow, I'm the Managing Director of the Tribal State Commission.
And Richard?
Hello, I'm Richard Rosen. I'm a state commissioner. I live in Bucksport.
How about Mr. Checkaway?
I'm Bob Checkaway, a state commissioner from Freeport, and I think I've unmuted myself this time.
Yes, you have. You're coming in loud and clear, Robert. Thank you.
Oh,
for
I've got
joining
this
today.
down to a science now.
Okay, Mr. Polchis.
I unmuted myself. Anyhow, I'm Bert Polchis, the other commissioner appointed by the Penobscot Nation. Welcome, and hope everyone's well.
Thank you, Bert. And John Caswell.
John Cashwell, State Commissioner, Bangor, Maine.
Thanks, John. Sandy.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sandy Yarmouth, Passamaquoddy, Pleasant Point Commissioner.
And
Talking
James. James Cody.
James Cody, State Commissioner, Farmington, Maine.
All righty. Thank you all. I'm going to kind of turn it over to you, Paul, to kind of guide us through these work plan items. There's a list of about 11 things, I guess, that the commission has worked on in the past. And several of them are ongoing items and several of them are new items, which hasn't had too much discussion yet. But Bert, did you want to jump in?
Yes, we missed a couple commissioners. The Malice seats, I think.
We've got,
Hey guys, can you hear me? I just managed to get the video up and going here. I can see all of you at least.
yeah, we see Izzy.
You all set, Bert?
Um,
Well, we don't have Sam yet, and we don't have Kevin yet. And we don't have Matt.
we have quorum.
Well, we've got 8, and we've got every,
Well, we have all the governments are represented here.
Okay, yeah, we do. All right.
So I think that's the main thing.
I expect Sam to join. And I have not heard from Matt, so I don't know if Matt's going to join. So should I go ahead?
And this first part of agenda I don't think is going to include any motions or any action. It's really.
No, there's no action items here, and I'll go ahead if it's okay.
Yeah, we're ready whenever you are, Paul, unless anybody else has any other questions or comments before we jump into the agenda. All righty. It's all yours, Paul. Thank you.
So we're having a work plan session because, well, basically because it's been a while. It's almost 2 years now that I've been here. We haven't really done a work plan. I mean, we've had some things that were brought to the commission by commissioners and things that have come up that the commission has dealt with, but we haven't gotten together, and there's Kevin. So this would be the first time since I've been here that we've gotten together and just consciously, deliberately talked about a work plan going forward. I guess I'm thinking of it in terms of, for now at least, the sort of the balance of the current fiscal year, which ends next June. And I was hoping, this could be an opportunity for the commissioners to talk about pending projects and issues and any other projects or issues that the commission would like to see pursued. That list I sent you, there's a lot of stuff on the list, and we certainly aren't going to talk about everything on that list today. I guess my view is, that this is the beginning of an ongoing work planning process. I don't expect us to have a work plan by the end of this meeting. But basically, I broke that list down into 2 areas, what I called administrative or internal issues, as opposed to, you know, the substantive issues. The example of an internal issue, and at the top of that list, I think, was the topic that's been discussed for a while, but we haven't actually taken any action or decided what to do on it, is whether or not to create a parallel nonprofit entity that would be a kind of an education research entity that as a nonprofit would have a better chance to attract some outside funding, because historically the commission has had a lot of difficulty getting non-governmental funding because we're such a, well, to put it as it often has been said, a funny animal. We're a statutory creature. We don't exist as a, you know, a corporate entity. We're not currently a nonprofit entity that can collect, you know, tax exempt contributions. So that idea has been kicked around for a while, and that's an example of one of the administrative issues. But as you can see from that list, there are a number of other administrative issues that one or more commissioners have brought up at various times. And then there's the substantive issues. And on the substantive side, of course, a lot of the effort of the commission this year certainly has been in the area of, you know, the state legislation, the follow-up to the task force. That certainly has been, you know, a major substantive issue. The amicus brief in the Penobscot River case was a substantial issue that the commission spent a lot of time and resources on, especially Bob Checkaway. And we've also had two ongoing projects. We have the study under section 62078 of the statute that deals with the impact of non-Indian activities on the sustenance fishing for the tribes. Research on that project is ongoing. We have 3 contractors who are working on that. That has been on the commission's agenda for some time, and I guess I work on the assumption that the intention is to, you know, proceed with that project. The other pending substantive project that we've had for a while was the research paper on the removal of the Article 10 language from the Maine Constitution. At the last meeting, I sent you close to the final draft of the report put together by Judd S.D. Kendall, following up on the work that Rachel Hampson had done. So the question there will be, number one, I think, what you want to do with that document, and do you want to continue to do additional work on the subject of the removal of that language from the Article 10 language from the Constitution, not removal from the printed copy of the Constitution, I should say. It's my understanding there's also been a project going on concerning that has produced an exhibit that's at the Portland Historical Society, and Darren Ranko and some others have been working on that, and I'm wondering if some of you may know about that, and that might be part of what we want to discuss in the context of what the commission wants to do on that issue. And then beyond that, I think this is the time for, you know, commissioners to talk about projects, issues that they would like to see time spent on, either administrative, internal kinds of issues, or other substantive projects. One thing that's been on the agenda and has been talked about is the water issue at Sabayak, and Kevin and Sandy. That's been discussed at meetings, but Kevin and Sandy participated most recently in a conversation with the tribal attorney who's been working on that problem, and so that issue is still out there. and whether or not there's a role going forward that MITSC wants to play in trying to help in some way to get a fix to the water problem at Sabayak. There's an endless list of other potential things that commissioners could say they want to bring to the commission. If you look at our statute doesn't give the commission a lot of enforcement authority, but it gives it very, very broad purview in terms of the relationships between the state and the tribes. Legal, economic, social. There's almost an endless variety of potential issues in terms of the relationship between the tribes and the state that the commission could decide it wants to put some focus on, and I would leave it to commissioners to. Well, I guess I'd say a couple things. I know at one point the idea has been mentioned of trying to work with other groups to promote the development of a state version of the Indian Child Welfare Act. That's one thing that's been kind of out there, and there's been mention, from time to time of other types of issues that are part of the relationship between the state and the tribe, whether they're health care, corrections, courts, law enforcement, economic development. There's a wide range of potential things that commissioners might want us to commit some resources to, and like whether to have a vice chair. That was one of the things that came up while we were talking about the chair position. And a couple of legislators, I don't know if anyone in the commission brought it up, but a couple of legislators brought up, with me at least, the idea that on the state side, they would like to see some change in how that's something that a couple of state legislators had proposed. So anyway, those are some of the things that are on that list, and I don't want to hog all the time. So I would leave it to John, to the new commissioners collectively to talk about that.
Well, first of all, I'd like to have Kevin introduce himself. He just kind of came on to the call here.
Kevin Hancock, State Commissioner from Casco. Hello, everybody.
Kevin is also the co-chair of the MITSC right now, the interim co-chair. So I don't know how we should proceed. Do you want to start right at the top of this list and just have some discussion about each item and see what how the commission feels about moving forward, and kind of maybe get an idea of what the next steps might be of each.
Yeah, if I could, John, I'd suggest two things. One, that on the internal administrative list, and my personal feeling is that the highest priority issue on that list would be to make a decision whether we want to move forward with trying to create, a parallel nonprofit entity. Bob's done a little bit of background on this. That's the one thing on that list that I would definitely want to make sure you get some attention today. Again, this is not the only time we're going to do work planning, but and on the substantive list, yeah, I think you could kind of work your way down the list.
All righty, Bert, go ahead.
Yeah. So as far as the formation of a parallel nonprofit entity for education/research, I think that that is paramount. We need to, we talked about it for several years now. And I think that we need to start a process of getting that done. We can talk about it, which we have for quite some time. But the fact remains, we at this point, We don't have um, a lot in regard to like funding, which we definitely need to in order to uh, put in place, um, you know, the staffing that we need in order to do a lot of the work that we do, you know, that we're required to do. So I think, you know, for now, I think that's one of the main things that we should be looking at. As far as looking down these lists, yeah, we can have some discussion on a lot of it. However, I think you know, some of it too, we need to keep in mind that, you know, we have a new chair that's going to be coming on, and you know, some of the decisions we make are going, you know, should be involving that person once that person is seated.
I would, if I could jump in there for a second. One, again, I guess I will say again, I don't think any of us expect that decisions on the work plan are necessarily going to be made today. And with a new chair, coming in, you know, apart from being chair, the chair is, you know, a full member of the commission. So Bert's point is well taken there. As far
Yeah,
as
John Cashwell, you had your hand up.
Yeah, let Paul finish.
I
Oh,
just
I'm sorry, go ahead.
to underscore what Bert said on the funding, I mean, basically, you know, we're still in a posture where we have some carryover, and we're able to function at the level we're functioning at now, or even at a higher level if the commissioners made that decision. For a while, we can do that. But the longer term picture is the state and tribal funding that we get together, and that, which is virtually all of our, which is essentially all of our funding, isn't sufficient to really maintain even one full-time professional level staff person. So without that carryover money, we would be facing a very different situation. And when the carryover money has been used, we will not have the resources to continue even the current status unless we are able to secure additional funding, whether that's governmental funding or from other sources. And somebody's got a quacking duck.
Was that you, John, quacking?
That's my quacker.
Okay, go ahead, John.
Yeah, you know, we talked about this a little bit at, excuse me. We talked about it a little bit at Sherwood Forest. Down to Pleasant Point, we haven't talked about it that I know of since. We keep talking about an amorphous sort of source of funding, but until we get why do we want it, what's the benefits, what's the legal issues that are surrounding it, do we have the authority to do it, until we get that all down and laid out in a piece of paper, so that we can talk about it rationally rather than make it a wish list. I don't have time for it until it's laid out exactly what you want it, why you want it, what it's going to take to do it, who's going to do it, and who's going to administer it, what's the tax issues. We know nothing, except we should have a nonprofit. That's what I know so far.
Yeah, I certainly am with you on that, John. I'm questioning, you know, myself, the legality and the process. I've sat on quite a few NGO and nonprofit boards over the years, but I've never been on one that's kind of like this group. MITSC is, you know, it's an intergovernmental group where each of us are appointed by our governments. So we're not a nonprofit entity. we are an intergovernmental entity. So that to me would be a threshold question if we are going to have further discussion about going down that pathway. So, and I'm with John in that I don't want to spend a lot of time just talking about it. Let's maybe ask Paul, and this is where his expertise being an attorney would be helpful, to just maybe take a look at, the founding language of MITSC from the Settlement Act, and then maybe do a quick and dirty analysis of if we could do that, if we could create a nonprofit organization for fundraising purposes, and how we would set that up if there's a path to get us there. What would that look like, and how would we set that up? So, I'm with John, and I don't want to spend a lot of time and resources on this until we get those threshold questions answered. So that's my opinion. Go ahead, Bert.
Yeah, I understand all that, John and John. But I'm gonna throw Bob under the bus right now, because I know that Bob would be our nonprofit guru as far as knowledge and stuff like that. So, and luckily we have Bob on this commission, and so maybe we can ask Bob, hey, what do you think?
May I speak? Yeah, I've been poised to do some work on that issue for, I don't know, 6 months or more, but I've never really quite gotten the go-ahead. I would be glad to write up, a précis of what the field of nonprofit law holds for us. I can tell you right now that there are a lot of unknowns, like there's nothing in the statute that says MITSC should be allowed to form a funding corporation. On the other hand, there's nothing that says we can't. I was surprised to learn that there is actually an IRS procedure for getting a letter deeming an entity the equivalent of a government for purposes of tax deductibility. But that just looks so esoteric to me. I would think it would be easier to just form a plain old nonprofit and file it with IRS, and you either get a letter from them saying you're exempt or you don't. And if we're exempt, then we're off and running. I would need to actually file that kind of a thing. I would need a lot of accounting type help, because what they want to know is how much money you're going to bring in, where is it going to go, even though it's all kind of a projection. But Paul, perhaps you and who else can we grab? Richard, somebody who knows finance. I could do at least a précis without getting into dollars, if you wish.
Go ahead, John.
I still like a roadmap on what we have to do to get through to the end.
Yes.
Before we go, yes, whether we can or can't. I mean, that's already IRS, and we haven't figured out, well, how's it going to be run? Who's going to run it? And how all of that works. What do you have to do? We know nothing except for we've talked about it for 6 months.
Sandra?
It seems like this can kind of happen simultaneously if Bob Checkaway is willing to do his piece and Paul is willing to do the pieces that Bob isn't able to do, and Paul know that I would be willing to assist you with doing any kind of note taking and stuff like that. Proceed.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Thanks, Sandy. Kevin?
Yeah, two thoughts. First, on the nonprofit, I'm totally with Bert on this in terms of its benefit. They're super easy to set up. They're super inexpensive to set up. They can be structured so they're exceptionally simple. And all you're doing is creating a shell that you can run the right programming through. Let's take, Paul made the point, let's say we were going to do some research on a subject relevant to the tribes in Maine. It gives you the opportunity to raise money for that research or put that research project through the nonprofit. I think it would give us a lot of extra flexibility without any extra complexity. They're really extremely simple. But moving past that, what I wanted to say is I'm really glad we're starting to kind of talk strategically about where MITSC might like to go. And as has been said, we certainly have got to include our new chair in the middle of that for sure. But just thematically, I like the idea of MITSC thinking a bit more broadly about its ability to contribute. I like, as Paul has talked about, using the full latitude of our bylaws, which to me are exceptionally broad. If there is an idea or an opportunity to advance the economic or social well-being of Maine's tribal communities, that's totally fair game to be our interest. I have felt for quite some time, and I've said this before, that it is a losing game for tribes in this country to put too much focus on their state government or their federal government. I do not think that's a game that tribes have ever won or can ever win. Some of it has to be done by necessity, but I really like the idea of thinking a bit more broadly about how MITSC could help tribal communities beyond the purview of state government. I think about, I'm a state commissioner, right? My expectation, no matter how many terms I stay on this commission, is I will never hear from anybody in state government. Nobody's talked to me from state government. I don't expect anybody to ever talk to me from state government. And I don't think state government's very interested. Talk about the elephant in the room. I don't think state government's very interested in MITSC. I have no basis to think that MITSC is important in the eyes of state government other than filling some seats whenever they're open. And I know our core charter, dating back now almost 50 years, 40 years, was focused on the 1980 Settlement Act. But as we've said before, every year that goes by, that act is going to become older and older and less relevant. I think about the people in Indian communities and how much of their typical day is spent talking about state government, and how much of our time is spent talking about state government. And I think there's a disconnect. I really am just interested in what can we do to help advance the economic and social welfare of Maine's tribal communities. And I think it means paying less attention to state government.
All that being said, now how do we do this so we can get on with the subject and have a deliberate debate on the structure and what we can do and what we can't do? We can keep doing this for another 6 months, and I'm not going to do it till I see an outline of where we're going and what we're doing and why and what it means and what it takes.
I'd be willing
Yeah,
to help
does,
Paul put that timeline together. Give us a deadline. Tell us what you want and how you want it and when you want it by. It's fairly simple.
The guy in the upper left-hand corner ought to be able to manage to do all that and get us on track.
Yeah, I'd like to close, bring this agenda item to a close and ask if anybody else has anything else to add at this point, any of the commissioners. And hearing none, I think.
Bob has a question.
Right,
Oh,
well,
I'm
John?
sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
Just a point of order, and an aside to Paul. About a year ago, didn't we get some kind of notification that some state entity was going to perform an operational audit of the commission and its
Uh,
work plan and so on?
Yes, but it hasn't happened. And I gather that that actually hasn't happened in a long time.
Okay, never mind.
So Paul, let me ask you, do you have enough information and input from the commissioners to put together a document, for lack of anything better to call it the roadmap to a 501c3 or to a nonprofit entity? And maybe work with Mr. Checkaway, and between the two of you, we can come up with a document that would guide us to the next steps here.
Yeah, I think working with Bob, we can do that. I think we've had conversations really that have got us part of the way there already. Bob would have focused more on this sooner if he hadn't done all that work on the amicus brief, frankly, so.
Right, and that's behind us now, so this is a good time, I think, to.
As to the bigger issue that Kevin raises, which is really to me, a different issue, as Kevin said, from the state, since he's been appointed, I had the same experience when I was a state commissioner. Other state commissioners Roy Partridge and others have related exactly the same experience. And I think that the other current state members of the commission, I'm not going to speak for them, but I suspect they've had pretty much the same experience. Kevin's take is.
Yeah, I mean, that's an issue for the state commissioners to grapple with. If they feel that they need more input, if any commissioner feels that they need more input from the governments that appointed them, they're free to do that. Like with the tribes, I don't get a lot of input from our tribal leadership, but when there's an item that is important enough, I make sure that the tribal chief is briefed, and I can get input from him directly or through the council. So I really want to keep going here and move beyond this. That's what Kevin did bring up, is a much larger issue that perhaps can have more discussion at some point. But did you have something else, Kevin? I saw you had your hand
Well,
up.
super quick, John. Thank you. I know you want to move on. I just wanted to clarify. I think you understood this, but I'm not hoping to hear from the state, just to be clear. That's not what I'm looking for. My point is, if you look at how Indian communities can advance and put all the opportunities in two buckets, one is working through the state and the other is stuff we can do without the state. I think the bucket that doesn't include the state has way more potential than the one that does. And I would like to see MITSC focus more on broadly advancing the welfare of Indian communities with or without the state.
Yeah, no, I'm
Thank you.
very glad that you're thinking that way and have, clarified your feelings on that. And I think if anybody was to really dig into the history of this commission since 1980, they would find that they have addressed many points of contention between the state and the tribes, and that generally speaking, the state has not considered very many of MITSC's recommendations over the past 40 years. And, we have to keep in mind, who is the state? I think to a lot of tribal people, it's like a game of whack-a-mole where, we talk about the multi-headed hydra of state government. Who is the state? Is it the legislative branch? Is it the governor's branch, the executive branch? Is it the judicial branch? So yeah, that's a very big question, or a very big issue that you brought up, Kevin. But I'm ready to move on. So you're all set here, Bob and Paul, with your marching orders, Paul, for the next, to put this document together?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Can you, whoever's the host, I think it's Paul, it looks like he just left. I was gonna ask him to allow me to share the screen so I could bring up a document. Can you allow me to share the screen, Mr. Host?
You can do that anyway.
You can,
Oh,
I
no,
thought
you
you
can't.
could do it.
Nope.
Pardon?
Okay, I'm clicking on screen share. And it says that the host has disabled screen sharing.
Not on
So I
purpose.
do need the host to enable screen sharing.
Okay, I didn't do that on purpose. I need to find it.
I know you didn't.
Yeah, normally I would see screen share at the bottom of my screen here, but I'm not seeing it. Help.
Do you have your screen like completely enlarged, or is it
Yes.
just partially? Because if it's not completely, then you won't see it.
No, I've got it full screen. And I'm not seeing, I'm seeing various things at the bottom of my screen, but I'm not seeing the screen share that I think I've normally seen.
Do you see one that says more with 3 dots?
Here we go. Okay, so I've got something up here, select a window or an application you want to share. Well, this is for me to share something. I'm not saying how I've disabled John from sharing. I'm sorry, I just don't see it here.
Is there somewhere where you can enable other participants to share their screen?
Let me look into participants.
Okay, well, let's move on. Basically, I was just going to share the list of things that we're talking about in terms of the work plan.
Well, maybe I could just quickly review it, or.
Yeah, there's, what we just talked about was the first thing on the internal and administrative list of things.
Well, let me try and see if I can share it then.
I believe the rest of those items.
Do you have it?
Ah.
Yeah.
Yay.
Okay. Am I sharing it or are you, Paul?
I'm sharing it.
Okay, so on the internal administrative list, we just knocked off number 1, and it looks like the other 7 things, numbers 2 through 8, should probably be reserved for a future meeting with the new chairperson.
I agree.
That's all, reorganizing the committees, selecting a vice chair, looking at the bylaws, office lease stuff, staffing issues, FY21 budget. So let's move on to the substantive issues. The first one is the pending legislation. I believe we're talking about LD 2094 there. And there was a couple other bills dealing with consultation and resolution. So why don't you go ahead and lead us into that discussion, Paul? Thank you.
Okay, well, basically what happened in the Judiciary Committee is that the other 2 bills, that were basically the consultation dispute resolution bills, were basically erased, and those numbers, LD numbers, were used to split 2094, or to split out pieces of 2094. So there are now 3 bills that deal with substantive issues coming out of the task force. There are no bills that deal with consultation dispute resolution at this point. So this first item is addressed to those 3 bills that deal with specific jurisdictional changes, of the statute. So what I mean by number 1 is, does the commission intend to want to take specific positions with respect to those proposed changes? There are now 3 bills: the big bill 2094, which I think is still intact, but then 2 smaller bills. The commission up to this time has not taken specific positions with respect to any of the proposed changes. So the question there is, going forward, looking probably at this point now into the next legislature, would the commission want to revisit the question of whether or not to take specific MITSC positions on proposed changes to the jurisdictional framework? That's what that's about.
Paul, do you know what the status is of those 3 bills? And have they been printed? Are they available
Well,
to look at? And is the legislature, are these just going to be kicked over to the next session?
It appears at this point that they would have to be reintroduced in the next legislature. And I gather, someone else can correct me if they know different, but I gather that is generally the expectation, is that those 3 bills are going to, show up, as LDs in, the next legislature. Maybe there'll be some changes in them. I don't know. I haven't heard anything that indicated there'd be any further action now this year. Judiciary voted in favor of those 3 bills, but it didn't go beyond, the Judiciary Committee because the legislature hasn't met. As far as the copies of the 3 bills, I did send those at the time after the last Judiciary meeting. I sent those, but I can send them again with the specific statutory language that's been now assigned to each of those 3 bills. And again, I didn't expect this is something the commission would get into in detail today. The question for the work plan is whether it's something the commission wants to get into.
Well, I would suspect that it would be something that the commission would want to be involved with, since it does affect potentially MITSC's role going forward.
Well, the proposals that I'm talking about are really not the ones that relate to MITSC. Well, there's 1 or 2 in a minor way, but these are the basic jurisdictional provisions. That's what's in these 3 bills.
Okay, well, let's open it up for discussion here. I'd like to get some input from the other commissioners.
John?
Yeah.
Just to offer a perspective, just to open up the discussion. So, and this really goes to, I think, some of what Kevin touched on earlier, but just to go back, so the task force was created by the legislative leadership of the current session. So the presiding officer in the House and the presiding officer in the Senate created the commission, the task force, to do the work that they did. And that was a creation of the legislative branch. The process demonstrated a significant amount of direct government to government contact during that whole process, tribal government to state government in a variety of different forms, with MITSC being in a supportive and informational role. And so now as this legislature comes to an end and the work ends with it, unless the task force was created to go beyond the end of this session, which I doubt, but I have to go back and look at that, then I guess the point I'm making is that the driving force behind all of this effort has been the current legislative leadership establishing it, and then the government to government work. So I guess my guidance that I would look to first before having MITSC take a definitive position is to see what is the future. Will the legislative leadership resume and take this up again? What is the position of the tribal to state government direct discussions on all of this? And then I think we can determine where MITSC should play a role. But we haven't been the leaders in this effort. And I think I'd like to see where all the leadership intends to take it next first.
Yeah, that makes sense, Richard. No sense us spending a lot of time discussing it if it's dead in the water, so to speak, unless MITSC feels strongly enough to want to try to encourage perhaps the legislative leadership of the next session to pick up where they left off on this one. I would think that that could be a role of this commission.
I don't disagree with that.
The original legislation did address several issues that MITSC has taken up in the past. You know, LD 2094 had a lot of components that MITSC had worked on over the past 40 years. I'm sorry, Richard, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry. I guess I'm saying what I witnessed through the last couple of years of the process of this bill and the work of the task force was that the tribal leadership and the tribal legal representation made it quite clear that they were pursuing the work directly with the state government. And whether it was on the tribal side or the state side, at least it felt to me in MITSC as though we were we were an observer, we were a provider of backup information, and we were a resource, but we were never really, it never felt at the MITSC commission level that the state or the tribal leadership laid out to MITSC a strategy and revealed the cards that they were holding, that they made it quite clear that this was government to government. And so I'm just saying, all I'm really saying is I don't want to get caught in the stampede between that role. And once the dust settles and the leadership all decides how they want to go forward with this, then I think we understand the landscape. But I don't get the sense that we're going to be in a position of leading it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we would be either, but we could be in a position to encourage the legislature, the next session, to consider, picking up where this one left off.
John?
Anybody else? John,
Yeah.
was that you?
Yeah, that was me. Doing anything now, like Richard said, is a case of of ready, fire, aim. We don't know what the landscape is. We don't know what the legislature is going to look like. I don't know if the tribal side of this commission is involved with the tribal decisions or not, but certainly to Kevin's soliloquy a little while ago, we're not being asked, for input or anything else. I think we're bystanders in a legal world that's way beyond us at the moment. And I think we should let this thing simmer until we know what we're cooking.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I just want to point out that, I mean, MITSC is the entity that was created as part of the Settlement Act to address the effectiveness of the act and to broadly review the relationships between the state and the tribes. And I get what Richard and John and others have said. The fact of the matter is that that entire process went on without the commission ever taking a position on any of the substantive proposals. Number one on this list here is just the question of, is that still the role that the commission intends to play? Because I don't think there's much doubt there's going to be legislative proposals in the next legislature, but is MITSC not going to take positions with respect to the very important substantive changes that are being proposed? That's my question.
I'll remind everybody that on the task force and the way it was set up by the leadership of the legislature and with the tribes is we're ex officio at that thing, which automatically says our level of equality with the government of either side is not. Let me finish. So at the same time, to your point, substantive issues, and we haven't seen them written. We don't know the laws. We haven't been asked by either side that I know of to engage. And January, all of this is going to become much clearer in January than sitting here in the middle of October. I don't know what the rush is because government doesn't move that fast anyway. And it'll probably be the last bill that they deal with in the legislature if they do. I just don't understand why we're getting flustered up on this thing right now.
Oh, we're not getting flustered up, and there is no rush. I think what we're discussing here is what kind of direction we're going to give our staff as to how much time they should or could or will spend on this legislation and what's going forward. And I have to agree with what Paul said a minute ago about our statutory foundation. I don't see how giving our mission and our charge from 1980 that we could not be involved with the legislation. But you're right, it's not going to get going until January. So we're kind of in a wait and see mode right now, as I see it. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I understand all that, and we're not proposing to do something right away. It's a work plan for the rest of the fiscal year, but I just want to make the point that as the person who sat on the task force, for the commission, the governor's office and the attorney general's office were also ex officio, but that didn't stop them from having all kinds of direct involvement and saying exactly what their positions were, especially the attorney general's office during the process, and then the governor's office after the fact. But MITSC had no positions. we had the same status as the governor's office and the attorney general's office, but we took no positions. I had no guidance to express any positions for MITSC. And frankly, that it was kind of frustrating. I just I'm looking as we go into another legislative session, is it the sense of the commission that it is government to government and the commission is not going to actually take positions? Or does the commission want to revisit that question in light of what happened with the task force? That's where I'm at. So.
Anybody else?
John,
Yes.
I have just a thought for Paul that might be helpful. I'm trying to be practical about this. Paul, I certainly would have expected as a commissioner, knew and would have expected that you were paying attention to this pending legislation, that you were engaged in it, and that you would be formulating an opinion on it. I mean, I wouldn't encourage you to stop doing that if I'm saying this jokingly, but you're at this full time, and if all you did was what we told you to do, you'd have hardly nothing to do. I think we really are looking for you to run point on a lot of this. And if you see a subject that you think we should be taking a stronger position on, I would encourage you every time to bring that forward. And then if the commissioners want to redirect it, they certainly have the prerogative to do that. But I would kind of look at this in the opposite direction. I would have no idea what position to take on that bill. I haven't read it. I'm not planning on reading it. And I, in part because I know you're there to really filter it. And if you see something you think we should be doing, I think that's a huge part of your role, is to put that right in front of us. Always, including on this subject.
All righty. Any other comments from anybody about the legislation? I guess then it's gonna be a kind of a sit and wait and see what the legislature does. And then at that point, I think it would be the proper time to decide on what level of engagement the commission will have.
Well, can I just add?
Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Initially, this discussion started on these bills. The discussion was in the context of the Judiciary Committee took this action, and it appears as though nothing will happen because this legislature will expire on the first Wednesday of December, and it's extremely unlikely, and nobody expects that they will meet and take any action on this or any other bills that remain unaddressed. So that I think is probably an accurate assessment. But when we talk about, well, what will the next legislature do? What I'm trying to say is it would be helpful, as speaking as one commissioner, to understand the strategy and the landscape from all the parties that were involved in this. So it's not only what may or may not the legislature do or the governor do, what is the position of the tribal governments? What is the strategy from the tribal leaderships and the attorneys and the people that were involved, again, in the direct relationship, government to government? So that's all I'm saying is I don't know what the landscape is. I don't know what the strategy is. And it would be very helpful to have that as an informational sharing element of MITSC, so that we have a better sense of the landscape going into the beginning of another term, another legislative term.
Well,
Yes, that does
There's no
make sense
dissent.
to me.
if there isn't any dissent from that, I'll take that as basically a directive to contact the various parties and try to get a better idea of what they anticipate happening with the legislative proposals. It doesn't still address the basic question of whether MITSC would this time around take positions. But in light of what Kevin said, I would take that as a directive that I should feel free to propose positions. So.
Yeah, I agree with Kevin and propose positions or propose options. And certainly, you know, keeping the commission informed of the discussions that are going on. All righty. Well, are we ready to move on to number 2 here? Does anybody else want to say anything about LD, what was LD 2094?
Hello.
Bert,
I
you're up,
can't
Bert.
I can't see if you can see me because I got this this list up on my screen and I anyhow, my thought is that, you know, we cannot wait. We should not wait to find out whether or not the next legislative session is going to pick this up. I'm assuming that they will, from what I heard in the past, you know, before when the task force was talking and when the Judiciary Committee was discussing that. But as far as this commission goes, we should have you know, some type of a stance on, you know, on a position on those things that were being discussed in the first place. You know, whether or not we get the chance to officially state our position, we should have one. And so that means, you know, we need to also know, you know, where it stands right now. But I don't think we should. I think it would do more harm for us to just wait until they start their, you know, process over again. We should already have some type of position, and I think we should be working on that.
All righty. Anybody else? Thank you, Bert. So this sounds like it'll be an ongoing discussion within the commission. And it's pleased to hear everybody's engagement in this topic. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to number 2 on the substantive list, which is MITSC proposals for consultation and dispute resolution legislation or executive orders. And then also about assemblies of tribal and state leaders. Paul, do you want to introduce this one to get?
Sure. This item is on there because LD 2118 addressed all of this in the last legislature, but all that language was removed in 2118 and was used as a vehicle to be one of the 3 bills dealing with the jurisdictional issues now. So currently there is no bill, and that addresses the consultation dispute resolution or the assemblies. And MITSC had a significant role in that legislation as drafted. So the question I see from MITSC is whether or not MITSC wants to pursue another way to present those same ideas that were included in that legislation, especially with respect to the role of MITSC, or whether, I guess, in the alternative, wait and see if it evolves out of the, the other larger process with the legislation. Because just to remind you all, last year during the task force, there was always this sense that they would get to this eventually, the issue of consultation, dispute resolution, other things that got eventually put into 2118. But the task force never really got there. The task force was, focused on the substantive jurisdictional issues, essentially ran out of time. And so the 2118 emerged from a post-task force process, largely driven by, the co-chair of the Donna Bailey of the Judiciary Committee, who really wanted to see a piece, that dealt with these issues. So the question for the commission going forward would be, again, it's not an immediate thing. It's something that would evolve the end of this year, the first of next year, but does MITSC want to specifically promote some proposals similar to what was in 2118 or some other version of an approach, such as encouraging the governor to, issue another executive order? That's one pathway that I think the commission could support. Would be the executive order route, and perhaps while they're also pursuing the legislation as well. But under the John Baldacci administration, there was a pretty good executive order that he put out that required consultation on items that potentially affect the tribe. And I think that was a good executive order. It had language about recognizing the tribe's sovereignty, which is the big question. I mean, that's everything. While I mentioned that word sovereignty, just let me say that that's what everything that we've worked on would be better dealt with if the state of Maine could recognize that tribes have inherent sovereignty. I just thought I'd throw that out while we were talking about it. That's the issue. That's the big issue that everything else falls under. Yeah, an executive order. Perhaps, Paul, you might dig out that executive order from the files that went through in the Baldacci administration, and maybe get that out to the commissioners as a starting point for that discussion. And actually, Governor LePage had a darn good executive order at the beginning of his administration, but he ended up rescinding that executive order because he got mad at the tribes, because the tribes wouldn't do something that he asked them to do. So he rescinded that executive order, which I think that original executive order that Governor LePage did, I think was even stronger than Governor Baldacci's. At least some of the language was.
So, yeah, maybe you could dig those out, Paul, get them out to the commissioners, and perhaps under a next meeting or a future meeting, you could revisit that and perhaps ask Governor Mills if she would be interested in maybe work with Donna Loring or whoever in the governor's office to see if you could see if the governor is interested in putting out an executive order. I think if MITSC could do that, then they would have control over the language initially, at least, and it could reflect MITSC's, MITSC's desires. Go ahead, Bert. I see you jumping to get in here.
I can't see if usually I can see if I'm being seen or not, but I can't.
Yeah, you're being seen.
So anyhow, does this room look terrible? Anyway, so something that came to mind, while you were talking, it brought back something. Whatever happened to the discussion of Maine's legislature creating a permanent committee on Native affairs? That for one would be a big step, because I think that instead of the judiciary, us being under that purview of the judiciary committee, it would actually move to that particular committee, and that would give us and it kind of moves on to the next line with, in a sense, as far as legislative proposals to change, strengthen MITSC's role. But I think about that, and like I said, as you were talking, it came to mind. But as far as executive orders, because those executive orders, as we have bore witness to, they can easily be pulled. But even now, if there was legislation, and I don't know how the process goes, who has to submit it, to for possible proposal into legislature, to as far as making it a permanent requirement for all departments, to consult with the tribes, and or MITSC, when dealing with certain things. And I think that if there was that committee in place, then but again, that's a big if. That would help in a lot of cases. Would it be the end all? I don't think so. But at least it would put something in place that gives us some hope that we could come to some, we can get some better relations, even then. Anyway, that's just my thought.
Thank you, Bert, for that thought. Does anybody else want to jump in here? Any thoughts about an executive order, or perhaps pursuing some separate legislation similar to the bill that didn't go through? Okay, hearing none. Let's see, it's about 1:24 right now. What's your pleasure here? Do you want to move on to the next item here under the list? I know some folks have to leave right at 2. So perhaps it would be, yeah, okay, go ahead, Bert.
Just real quick, and on that line, that what you're, talking about, that the proposal to change the process by which MITSC members are appointed. For example, not all members would be named by governor and chiefs. I will say this right now. I can pretty much guarantee that the tribes would not go for that. We are appointed by our tribal chiefs, not by our chiefs, but by chief and council. So, and for good reason. Now, when it comes to the state, yes, I understand too that there's a process there, and it's not always a good process. We've seen that with Governor LePage, who failed to make the appropriate appointments in order to fill the seats that were vacant, by the on the state side. Suggestion there. If it can be done, maybe even divide that up. You have 3 different bodies in state government, which you have the executive branch, you have the Senate, and you have the House. So that's a possibility there. But as far as the tribes go, I doubt very much. And the thing is, there, I believe that also is in statute. So, that would require a, if it is in statute, I know it's in our bylaws, but I think our bylaws pretty much mirror this, the statutes, for, as far as MITSC goes. And that would require probably a change on the main implementing act. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because it's really quick. I think it was really quick, but I think I think pretty soon we need to think about taking care of one of the main purpose of this special meeting, and that's to go on with our election of chair.
John, can I?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I'm going to suggest, yes, I agree that it's probably time to move on to the chairperson issue. What I would suggest, if it's okay with everybody, is that I spend some time before the next meeting fleshing out various items that are on this list and give the commissioners, more detail on most of these things. Because I see work planning as an ongoing process, and with the new chair becoming part of that. And so if that's okay with you all, that's what I will plan to do.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. And it is going on 1:30. We want to get done at 2. So let's go ahead and move on to the.
Can I just add one quick comment on that last
Oh,
one?
yeah, sure. Go ahead, Richard.
Just, I know you're all aware of this, but just to highlight that in terms of the state appointments, there are boards and commissions where the legislature has the exclusive authority to appoint a member. And there are boards and commissions where the governor has the exclusive authority to appoint a member. In the case of the MITSC, this is one of those, what is considered a higher level appointment where you have both branches. So in the case of MITSC, it's a nomination from the governor with confirmation from the Senate. So this process takes the affirmative act of both branches. And so you can, as I say, you can redesign it and roll it like was proposed here, which would be just the legislature, but that just so you understand that would be a step down in terms of the idea of some boards, again, that are only appointed by a legislative branch, some boards that are only appointed by the governor, but there is a group where it was determined in statute where both branches should play a role. So it's just a question of what direction you want to take.
Yeah, and I'm curious, and Paul, maybe you could answer the question, where did this number 4 on the list, where did that even come from?
It came from, it came from a couple of different state legislators who felt that the legislature ought to be able to initiate some of the appointments to MITSC without them going through the governor.
Yeah, well, I don't even see why that needs to be an item with on our work plan, really, given what Richard and Bert have both said. You know, Bert clarified that it would probably not get the tribal support to change the way tribal members are appointed to the commission. And given what Richard said about both the governor's office and the legislature being involved, I don't even know why that's a discussion point on our work plan. Maybe it can drop off from our work plan.
Yeah, I have a problem with that. I put it on there because it was brought up to me by legislators. So.
Unless any other commissioners here feel strongly about that, I would suggest that we don't even have any more discussion about that. We got enough to do.
Okay.
Kevin, were you going to jump in? Did you have your hand up?
No, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else before we move on to the election process?
Could we drop this letter that's in my way? There you go. Thank you.
All righty. So we're going to have an election for the new chairperson of MITSC. MITSC went through a process, several-month process, where we solicited interested candidates. We put together some guidance documents as to what we were looking for a new commissioner. I mean, a new chair. I'm sorry, a new chairperson for the commission. Originally, there were 2 people that bubbled up to the top of the list for potential chairpersons. One of those has dropped off and has decided that they didn't want to be the chair at this time, which left us with 1 applicant. That applicant was reviewed, and we had a week or so ago, we had an interview with that person. And so today we're going to take action to install Paul Dowling as the new chairman of the commission. So
that's Paul Downing.
Downing, yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry. What did I say? Dowling? I meant Downing. Paul Downing. Is there a motion?
Kevin wanted to make the motion.
Well, no, I mean, we can all make it jointly. That doesn't make any, yeah, doesn't make any difference. Would you like to do it, Sandra?
Motion by
Kevin, you make the motion, I'll second. How's that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I make the motion that we elect Paul Downing as our chair. I think that he would be great and that he checks pretty much every box we'd talked about. I think we'd be super lucky to have him. So I'll make the motion.
There's a motion on the floor to elect Kevin. Paul Downing. I almost got you in there, Kevin.
Just to
to
clarify,
elect
the motion is
Paul
seconded by.
Downing as the chair. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sandra Yamo. Is there any further discussion before we move to vote? Hearing none, I think I'd like to do a roll call vote for this this action here. It's a pretty important action. We want to make sure we get it right. So I'm going to go ahead and do a roll call vote. And I'm going to start with myself, and I vote in the affirmative. Richard Rosen, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Aye. Mr. Cashwell, how do you vote?
Aye, aye.
Aye. Sandra,
Yay.
Kevin,
Yay.
Zeke,
Yes.
Robert Checkaway,
Yes.
Bert.
And because I was in the Navy, I'd have to say aye, aye.
Aye. And James Cody, how do you vote on this motion?
Yay.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Mm.
If you're listening, Paul, congratulations. You have just been voted unanimously to become the chairperson of MITSC.
John, I would, if I could, I would try to reach out to Paul right away if you think I should.
Before
Yes, I would definitely, I think you should reach out to Paul and let him know the good news. And then you can work with him to schedule the next meeting and the agenda and so forth. Yeah, Richard.
That issue of the next meeting, you may recall that originally you had all looked at November 22nd for the next meeting. I've mentioned this, John, to you, I think, but I would suggest that you look at moving that up to earlier in November now that you have selected a new chairperson. Because the full timeline for selection was, we thought might go in, well into November, but it turns out you now, before the middle of October, have selected a new chair. So I'm suggesting we try to look for a date in the first week of November to have a meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. Richard, were you gonna jump in?
I was just going to request a clerical job from Paul, please. Would you issue a hard copy letter announcing Paul's election and send it to the governor, the 10 members of the legislative leadership, and the appropriate leadership of all the tribes?
Yes, good idea. Thank you, Richard.
Very good. Bert.
Also, on a similar note, I'd also ask that Paul, you can maybe work to connect Paul and our former chair, Jamie Bissonnette-Louie, to come together, because I'm sure there's a lot of things she would like to, and we will probably need her to transfer over to our new chair. And well, I'll say something later on about on another point, but yeah, I'd like you to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea if you can get them together and have see if Jamie is interested in doing an exit interview either with the commission. She kind of did one already, but
Yes.
To reach out and see if she would do that and connect with Paul Downing. I think that's a great suggestion, Bert.
I will do that. And John Banks and Kevin, as you've been acting co-chairs, do you want to set up something with all four for handoff, or do you prefer that I just try to get Jamie and Paul connected?
Well, I've always been a lumper as opposed to a splitter, so I'm in favor of bringing everybody together. But it wouldn't hurt, I think, in this case to have a, to see if they want to have a 1-on-1 as well and sit down for a couple hours with just those two. I think that could be valuable as well. Sandy, you've had your hand up for a little while.
Yeah, now that we've chosen a chair, can we jump into the agenda item about whether or not we will have an assistant? It just feels like that would be a good time to have this conversation. And if we can, I would nominate Kevin Hammond.
Okay.
We got Darlings, Downings, Hancocks, Hammonds. Jesus, we got her down pat here.
I'm sorry. Wrong lumber company. Sorry.
Boy, that hurt. That hurt, didn't it, Kevin?
No, nothing hurts. And once you hit a certain age, it all stops hurting.
Yeah, so, we can blame that on the COVID, John.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to have that discussion now.
I think we might wait. That's lovely to mention that, Sandra. I appreciate it. But I think with Paul coming in, it's going to be a big job to just help him get settled. And maybe we focus on that first, see how it goes. And if he feels later a vice chair would be helpful, we could jump right back to that. It's very gracious of you, but that might be my suggestion.
But when I think about it from a process standpoint, in the event that he's unable, there should be somebody who can slide right in and perform that function. I'm kind of big, like not in a hierarchical sense, but I'm into the order and organization, and I believe we should have a chair and a vice chair and a treasurer and a secretary. Okay, I'll stop.
Go ahead, Paul.
I was going to suggest maybe as a way to move that conversation forward is that I could go ahead and draft a possible bylaws change that would address that. And then, because we could take Sandy's motion today basically as the first time that's brought, because bylaws changes require, 2 meetings. And I could draft a bylaws language that could be considered, at the next meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. I guess I want to hear from some of the other commissioners as well, if we even want to consider doing that. I know there's been a lot of discussion about it. I think it makes sense to do that, but yeah. Makes sense to me, Paul.
Okay, it's just, it'll put something out there concrete that you can make a decision on.
Yeah, Bert. Go ahead, Bert.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. You can put it together and we can have more, more discussion at a later time. And like you said, Paul, there is part of our bylaw that kind of requires us to do certain things a certain way. As far as getting these things on the agenda. But there is something that I want to put out there real quick before we get a chance to forget again. And it is part of old business. And sorry, the dogs. Them dogs on my phone. They're down in Baltimore and they're still barking at me. I'm actually here in the beautiful home, Bunwebscape, which you guys refer to as Penobscot. So anyway, anyhow, so I didn't want to give it a chance to be forgotten, because it is something that was decided upon, and it was never taken care of as of yet. And I think it's been a couple of years now. And when we had former commissioners who had left the commission. And a couple of years ago, I believe, I can't remember the exact time frame, but we as a commission decided that we were going to our staff was going to set this up to where we can put together something in thanks to those former commissioners for this, their time and service, all the energy that they spent, working on this commission. And now we have a now former commission, our chair, and we need to not forget. We need to go ahead and get this ball rolling. We need to make sure that they're taken care of, that we can give them the proper thanks, the respect, out of respect, because, they've done so much within this commission. A lot of the work we've done, I don't see having been able to get it done without them, so I think we need to make sure that is done. I don't know how we go about it. Like I said, it's old.
That sounds to me like a subcommittee.
Well, I think we already had put together, and our staff was supposed to, set this up, and I think they've tried, but we got busy. And things got busier, and here we are now. We're at a point where I think it's time that we need to take care of that. And one of those commissioners has since passed, so we need to make sure we do what we can. Thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, this was last winter. We were planning to do this, and then things just happened, and it didn't come together. We were going to do it in Augusta. We wanted to try to make it a kind of a major event down in Augusta, and then other things just took over, and then COVID hit. So Bert's right that it kind of, time went by and it just didn't happen. Obviously it's not old with Jamie, so it's current with Jamie, but Mike Pearson, passed away, and we haven't really done anything formal, regarding that. It was only recently that his full obituary finally showed up. I think I sent that around. Roy Partridge, after many years of real effective service, left, and we were going to include Roy in that, that honoring process. I think there may have been other commissioners even earlier than that, but before my time as managing director. I guess at this point, I would wonder how far back do we go, in terms of, as far as that goes, because Roy was the only state commissioner when I came on as managing director. So I'm thinking we would include Roy, but and we've had some turnover on the tribal side as well. So we have some former tribal commissioners, including one tribal commissioner who also passed away. So I'm looking for a little more guidance on all you might want to include, in that process.
Well, that's kind of what I was thinking about in terms of a subcommittee. If we want to put together a subcommittee of 3 or 4 folks here from the commissioners to work with Paul to, see what can be done to recognize those folks. It's going to be tough with COVID. There's nothing like an in-person recognition process. But that might be tough with current restrictions on meetings and so forth. But anyway.
I would suggest, I would welcome if some commissioners working with me on that to kick that around. One possibility would be, because we can't do an in-person event and it's going to be even, several months more before we could do that. We may make the commissioners might decide to do something in terms of gifts or, gestures that could be done other than having a dinner or, I think the original idea was to have an honor dinner, but there are other ways we could show respect for the, former chair, former commissioners.
So who would like to be on this subcommittee to work with Paul to set this up? Bert,
I would like to nominate Zeke because but well, see, the thing, let me say something real quick, because Zeke, you guys had some awesome commissioners, and Brian and Linda, and of course Linda passed away, and that hurts, but being I would think that maybe since you're here and Sam's not, maybe we should nominate Sam, but but anyhow, so I just wanted to say that, because I know I haven't officially been able to make it up that way and visit with the family or anything, but Brian is still around, probably working his butt off. I as far as being on the subcommittee I would love to, and
Bert, I was going to say, Bert, I'm sure you've heard the expression that the fish wouldn't have got caught if he didn't open up his mouth. And so,
yeah, well,
so you are definitely going to be on this subcommittee.
And I figure, I have to respect my elders, John. And yes, I will.
I'm willing to join as well. And,
are you interested, Zeke?
Yeah, absolutely. For all the reasons why Bert just mentioned.
Good. We got 2 members from the tribal side. Anybody else? Who from the state side would like to be on this esteemed group of advisors? Do we have anybody? John, Bob, Kevin, Richard?
I'll help you out.
Thank you, Richard. Passamaquoddy, Sandy, you interested?
Yeah, sure. I wasn't really paying attention. What am I in for? I'm trying to do an email. There's a news reporter that's looking to talk to somebody from Wabanaki Public Health about there's a water issue, and I got nominated. So
good.
So at least I have an excuse.
So what? Nominated again.
No, we're putting together a subcommittee to advise Paul on the process for recognizing previous members of the commission.
Oh, absolutely.
We had planned on doing something like that before COVID hit. And
I could throw a hell of a party.
Back up and wants to. Yeah. Okay, good. You've got a subcommittee, Paul.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Zeke, Bert, Richard, and Sandra. All righty. That's progress. Thank you.
I got a process question.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
We do have a vacancy, as you well know. Is there anything wrong with the state people having a conference call to talk about finding one to put up for nomination as a group? Is that
Not
against
at
the
all.
law?
In fact, I would think that would be desirable.
Okay.
I think that makes a whole lot of sense, because really, I'm sure I think that the tribal commissioners a lot, several times we have times where we talk, and it would only make sense that the state commissioners would have that time as well, so. And Paul is trying to say something, because
Yeah,
I think
Paul, I was going to ask if you've had any correspondence at all with the governor's office on this vacancy.
I have, but nothing definite. I'm aware of one person from Aroostook County who's actually, there may be 2 from Aroostook County who've submitted their names. There's a online process that the boards and commissions has But of course, Governor Mills, she makes the decision. So I don't have any inside information as to what she may be thinking. I do have a question though, and
I'm wondering, just to follow up on that, Paul, if it would be, if you could just place a call to the governor's office and to the staff, to whoever does the appointments. I'm not sure who their person is now that does the appointments, but she usually has one staffer that works on,
I believe
you
it's
could
Missy O'Neill.
find out who that person is and just touch base with them and ask them
Yeah.
where
Well,
they're at, and that, MITSC is.
it's Missy O'Neill that I've had the contacts with, also Donna.
Yeah.
But I have a question for, and I think Richard would know the answer. In terms of a confirmation, Richard, what would be the earliest time that the new Judiciary Committee might actually be able to do a confirmation?
January.
January, okay.
Yeah. I mean, they could, yeah, no, it'd be January. It'll be the next legislature. Then they have to have the Senate vote. And as since Bob and I were before the Judiciary Committee the same day, there were several members of the Judiciary Committee that made it very clear to us that they are not interested in male nominees.
Yes, I remember you had to apologize.
I started all this thing here with the question, is it against the rules for us to sit down and figure out where we want to go with it, or suggest somebody to fit that category as well? So we can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have any objection
Thank you.
to that.
Robin Hood.
But let's find out where they're at, Paul, on that.
I will try again to get some more information from Missy or Donna, or maybe I'll just talk to Governor's Council. Yeah.
Yeah, they may have somebody already in the queue. We don't know. Okay, it looks like we're closing in on our adjournment time. So I would like to see if anybody has anything else that they would like to say in the last few minutes of our meeting here. I'd like to thank everybody for participating today, and thank you all for your engagement, particularly on the selection of the new chairperson. So yeah, go ahead, Kevin.
Just want to say thank you to you, John. You've done an excellent job guiding us here during this transition period. And we all really appreciate you and how you lead. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you, Kevin, for stepping up as well. You've been a very strong and consistent and dependable voice here on this group. And it gives me a lot of faith that this commission will move ahead in a positive way going forward. So thank you, Kevin, as well.
Yeah, thank you both for taking on the responsibility of chairing our esteemed group of people, and myself.
And me.
Don't sell yourself short.
2 thumbs up for both of you.
Okay, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at the next.
John,
Wait.
Hold on.
Need a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
motion by John, seconded by Bert. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a great day, folks, and
Yeah.
stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Yeah, everyone.
Bye.